Welcome to Q&A Selling Online, with answers to questions about creating an online empire, promoting products, or building a brand. Your host, private label and e-commerce entrepreneur, Quinn Amorm.
Welcome back, my friends. Today we have a special guest who is an entrepreneur, an editor, and a voice actor based in New York City. He's also the co-founder and the editor of BarBend.com. It's a media brand that provides multi-platform coverage of news, analysis, training, and opinion in strength training and sports. David is our guest today. He is a 2019 Forbes 30 under 30 list maker for media, as a veteran of the health and fitness industry, and he has nearly a decade of experience building and running editorial teams in that space. David has graduated from Harvard University, and he served for several years as the editor and the CRO of Greatest.com. Everybody, welcome David Tao. How's it going, David?
It's great to be here. Thanks so much for having me today.
Oh, it's a pleasure having you. And I got a tongue spasm there with CRO. Right?
It's a weird one because it's not something that when you think about a C-suite, you think CEO, COO, CCO, CFO. Chief Research Officer, that's not something everyone has, so it's a little weird.
I was going to say CCO, and it sounded a bit weird because it was the Chief Content Officer, but it was Chief Research Officer.
Yeah, CRO can also mean Chief Revenue Officer at some companies, so it gets really confusing.
Exactly. So, let's start by telling us, David, who you are, or let's talk about who you were before you were being a Forbes 30 under 30.
Well, thank you for the intro. So I was born and raised in Kentucky and grew up in a small town in central Kentucky. So for those who are geographically challenged, but not a lot of people know where I grew up. It's very much the middle of the United States, far away from pretty much everything that most people know. But I always had an interest in writing and was very into literature and working on my high school paper and all that sort of stuff. So when I went to college, I knew that's something I wanted to pursue, different types of writing. And after I graduated from college, I decided to pursue a career in journalism. So I actually worked for a time for Fortune.com, writing for their website. But it was at around the time when print journalism was not doing so well. And it's still not doing super well. But at the time, a lot of big outlets, the major legacy brands, especially magazines, were really struggling. And that's what I kind of thought I wanted to be. I wanted to be a magazine writer. But the jobs were all online. They were all in digital media. So I ended up for a few years working purely in digital media in New York, moved to New York right after college, and kind of fell into inadvertently, and not really something that I intended to do, but I'm lucky it happened. It kind of fell into fitness content. So working with Greatest, which is the fitness website still around, and then working, I contributed articles covering the CrossFit Games in its early days, and basically writing for a lot of different outlets about fitness and strength sports and sports within kind of the fitness realm. And that experience led me to do more and more and more in the fitness space, in the fitness content space. Fast forward a few more years, in a few different positions, and I co-founded BarBend.com because I love strength sports, weightlifting, powerlifting, CrossFit, strongman, but there wasn't this place online where you could get all the info you wanted on all of those. So we decided to start it, and that was in March. Launched that in March 2016. So here we are, almost 4 years later as of this recording.
Wow. And tell me something. Graduating from Harvard, of course, it is a big deal. So has that helped you in business? And I don't mean what you learned there, the fact that that's where you graduated.
That it has almost certainly helped me. And I don't feel great admitting that, because I like to think that it doesn't really matter where you go to school. And I actually don't think that the quality of my education, as far as what I learned in the classroom, was all that different than what anyone else would learn. I think college is, you get out what you put in, right? So if you work hard, the harder you study, the more I think you'll get out of it. Like, I wasn't the best student, to be perfectly honest. So I don't think I got as much academically out of it as I could have if I put more effort in. But having that name kind of attached to your name, it does definitely open some doors. And I think that there have been situations, and again, this is not something that I don't like that this happened. I don't like that this is a reality, but there have definitely been situations, especially earlier in my career, where I think people were more willing to give me the time of day because I had graduated from this place and that was supposed to give me some cachet. Ultimately, I'm not sure it was still up to me once I had my foot in the door, once I had someone's attention to convince them I was worth paying attention to. But I definitely think it grabbed people a little bit more, and I got some ears that I might not have gotten otherwise.
Very good. And there's a little thing that doing some research, I dug something up that I found fantastic. And actually, I never, you didn't mention it here yet, but I heard other podcasts where you haven't mentioned it. And it was the fact that you were an intern at Rolling Stone magazine.
I was, yeah. Wow, you really dug that up.
That is so cool. Is it really as exciting as it sounds to me, or is it just a normal place?
So I was an intern at Rolling Stone, and I applied this was in college, so it was a summer intern.
Yeah.
And when I applied, I didn't really understand that there were different departments at magazines like this, and they each had their own different interns. So I thought when I applied, if I got an internship, I'd be like an editorial intern. I'd be like writing stories and researching and talking to rock stars. It wasn't the case. I was an intern for the advertising department, so I showed up my first day at the job, and they were like, editorial interns go here, advertising interns go over here. And I started walking over to the editorial interns. They're like, no, you're with the advertising interns, having just no idea there were different internships. And I learned a lot. I worked with great people, and it was a fun experience, but it was a lot more learning how magazine ads were sold. I don't even really think they're sold like that anymore, because this was way, way back when. It was more about learning how magazine ads were sold than it was about the editorial process. So my dream was to go in and do all this editorial stuff and learn about being a music reporter, and I learned zero about that. But I did actually learn a little bit about ad sales and how content outlets monetize, and those are lessons that I still use to this day. But it was not the education I thought I would get. It was not like that movie Almost Famous, where he's basically writing for Rolling Stone as a kid and traveling around with rock stars. It was nothing like that.
Nothing like that. You know what? It actually just got a little bit even more exciting for me, because the advertising part is what excites me. So it's even a little bit better. Doing what I do, besides podcasting, of course, in the e-commerce world, advertising is fascinating. So being able to learn from somebody, even though the process that you learned is a bit outdated now, right? The magazine ads, well, now everything is online. It still would be so fascinating.
It was interesting too to see. I will say it was interesting to have a courtside seat to how large advertising deals are closed. So I would have never known. And certainly it's a bit different today, but it was very interesting how I'm trying to think of a big company, say General Electric or Sony or something.
Yeah.
If they're advertising in a publication, how do those deals close? And those are really big deals, and oftentimes they're for hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. And there's a lot that goes into that. It's very complicated. So I think I learned more than I anticipated, even though the first day on the job was a bit of a disappointment.
Yes. And then you founded BarBend, and why did you pick that name?
That was kind of random, and it was random because I pitched this idea to my co-founders, and we knew we wanted to go into business together, and we had this idea for this strength sports website. Of course, you need a good name, right? It's something that people remember. And I was like, okay, I'm going to basically lock myself in my apartment one weekend and try and come up with 100 different names. That was my goal, so come up with 100 different names, and we can narrow it down from there. And I think BarBend was the fourth name I thought of. And I was like, that's pretty good. I'm sure the website isn't available. I'm sure it's taken. Let me move on. And then I got to I came up with a few more ideas, and I had maybe 7 on the board. And I was like, wait a minute, let me just see if BarBend is available. Let me see who has it. And I just did a quick GoDaddy search for it.
Yeah.
and it was available. And it was available the URL for like $4. And I was like, that's it. That's it. So that's how the name came about.
Wow. That's how I do a lot of my name searches as well. I think about them, write them down, and then the only difference is right now I don't use GoDaddy anymore. I would go to Namecheap or Google Domains, type it in, and if it's not available, I kind of move to the next one. But yeah, good to know. So now when it comes to the online news, because that's the space that you're in, it seems to be old news media is, of course, dying, but I don't know. A lot of people say that about everything, email marketing, news, everything is right. But what I know is still growing is the BuzzFeed news type, right? People seem to love that. Are you doing a little bit of that in BarBend as well?
Well, I think BuzzFeed News they've gone in a few different directions. I mean, they have, BuzzFeed's kind of known for their clickbaity, listicle headlines, obviously. But, BuzzFeed also does a lot of in-depth reporting. They do a lot of investigative reporting today. I'd say that BarBend, when it comes to news, the majority of the news we produce, and I don't want to get into specific percentages, but the majority of the news we produce is, what you would call important that day. So it's an event result, it's a world record, it's someone withdrew from a competition, things relevant to like the day-to-day in the strength sports we cover. Some of the news we cover is a little bit more evergreen. It's still news, but it's kind of digging into the why things are changing, and it's less like day-to-day relevant, more just trends. And then, a lot of the other content we produce is op-eds, training tips, advice, workout programs, etc., more in-depth stuff. We don't do a ton of investigative reporting right now. We don't have an investigative reporting unit. That's something I think is very important. I think if you're doing investigative reporting, you need to have a lot of resources behind it, and it needs to be approached very carefully, and it needs to be fact-checked very carefully. So if you're talking about BuzzFeed News in that sense, we don't have that. I can see BarBend having that at some point in the future, but it is something that I'd like to build a unit around. Our news these days is more of just keeping folks up to date in strength sports because there aren't really outlets that consolidate everything that's going on in strength sports. We kind of serve as that outlet specifically for news.
Very good. And is it easy nowadays building an audience to anything? I was going to say to a site like yours, but to anything. Is it easy building an audience? What do you have to do to get, a loyal audience, somebody that's going to come back again and again?
That's the golden question, right? I was gonna say that's a great question. That's always a cop out because that's just someone stalling for time. But ultimately, our biggest challenge is building a loyal audience where one doesn't necessarily exist, right? Can we be the best outlet for strength sports to where everyone who wants information about strength sports, be it news, training tips, etc., can we be like the place they start? The answer is we're getting there, and we are that for some people, certainly, but we're not that for everyone, for that full audience yet. I want to be that for that full audience, but we're not there yet. We spend a lot of time thinking of a lot of different ways to increase our appeal across platforms. And that's a big reason we're going multi-platform. So we're investing in video, podcasts, things like that, not just our written content, because different people spend different amounts of time on their platforms. You and I might spend a lot of time in the podcasting realm, but a lot of people are spending their time on YouTube, and they're building their loyalties on YouTube, and they're finding the content creators they love on that platform. BarBend, while we started off as almost purely written, we can't do that anymore. We have to go cross-platform. So to build that engaged audience, it's almost like we have to build separate engaged audiences on each of these platforms.
Got it. And then do you try to redirect those audiences to your main website, I guess, for your training, for your exercises? Because that's going to be something even harder, is getting somebody out of YouTube, for example, and come to your site.
Yeah, we definitely want to give people the option. Obviously, barbend.com is the home for everything we make. But at the same time, it's a balance, right? And it's something that constantly, there are certain pieces of content on YouTube where it's like, hey, we really want you to go check out a more in-depth explanation of this on barbend.com. Here's the link. But there's also some content on YouTube where it's like, well, if they're watching this and they're enjoying this, they're probably going to enjoy this other video we've produced. So we should direct them to that video. And maybe they stay on YouTube, but maybe they're staying on our channel and they're looking at other videos we've made on our channel. It is a balance. I wouldn't say we've cracked the code perfectly as to what that is, but there are certainly pockets of content where we want to direct people to the website, pockets of content where we want to direct people to the podcast or from the podcast. And there's also video content where the most relevant thing I think we can do is show people more video content we've produced.
Gotcha. And let's talk about one of your failures once here at BarBend. You tried to monetize with something other than ads, and you tried to build in a e-commerce side of things. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so I will say right off the bat, the products we made, I thought, were very good. So we decided to sell things like branded foam rollers, weightlifting, really cool weightlifting straps, knee sleeves, and belts, actually, weightlifting belts, really high quality, American-made leather weightlifting belts that were like handmade to order. And the products were good. I still use these products. I bought some myself. And we sold some. And like it wasn't like it was a complete failure. It was revenue. It was a revenue driver. But the problem, and that we didn't think about, was that it wasn't what we were the best at the time. And it took so much energy from our team to do all this, to take care of making sure the products were good, making sure orders were fulfilled. We, found some partners to help with that, but we still were doing a lot of work behind it, right? Updating the product photos whenever there was a change to how something was manufactured. We wanted to try and do it the right way, but it just took a lot of our time. It took a lot of my time, my business partner's time, our team's time as our team grew. And we realized that while it was a revenue driver, it was taking energy away because we were a very small team at the time. We're still a small team, bigger now. It was taking energy away from what we were really good at, and the rest of the site was suffering. So we had to just stop it. So shop.barbend.com, we paused. I'd like to bring it back someday because I was really proud of a lot of the stuff we produced. I still hear from people who are like, when are you going to start selling those belts again? When are you going to start selling those lifting straps again? Like, my friend has one and I really want one. They've all lasted, like pretty much everyone I talked to about a belt, like still using that belt 2 years later because they were really high quality. But it just took energy away from where I knew our competitive advantage was, and that was just on the content side. So it was a failure in that, did it produce revenue? Yeah. Did people buy our stuff? Yeah. But it really started strangling other parts of our business where we needed that time. We needed that energy and that focus. So that's something that was I'll call it a conditional failure. And hopefully in the future we can start it back up again, but with a better sense of the actual resources and personnel resources we need to put in to make it work.
Yeah, for sure. I could see it as being something big. Anybody that's into fitness, of course, is a big consumer of supplements and even workout and proteins and stuff like that. So I could see how maybe even private label option would be, I don't know, maybe something to consider in the future. But.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously had to work with different manufacturers for different products. We didn't buy our own factory for everything that we made, right?
Yeah.
But I will say because of that, because we had different manufacturers, we worked with different manufacturers to design and make different things. It created more work, right? So it's something where people are good consumers in fitness, but they're also smart consumers, right? So I bring up the weightlifting belt as an example. If we had a weightlifting belt that was BarBend branded, and it was a bad weightlifting belt, it would not have looked good, and people would have let us know. They would let us know. So for us, it was about finding the right. It was a lot of work to find the right partners to actually make the stuff, to help us make the stuff. If we did it again, I think we'd want to be even more uncompromising on quality. But again, just understanding that it takes a lot of. You need to hire a team to manage that. You can't just have your editors helping out with it on the side.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point, because you definitely do not want a bad product with the name that you built into. It was so hard to build and now have a bad product, or even just a bad batch that could ruin everything. Yeah, excellent point. So you mentioned the partnerships that you do with a manufacturer. How about partnership with other media organizations to boost everybody? Do you have those, and how do you get them?
We do. I'd say our biggest one is with USA Weightlifting, which is actually the governing body for weightlifting in the United States. We are their official media partner. Right. So that's our biggest, and that brings creates a lot of responsibilities for us, but also gives us a lot of cachet, and also gives USA Weightlifting a lot of benefits. So, we go to the World Weightlifting Championships. It's a little bit different than someone who doesn't have that relationship. We are established. We have connections, and people recognize us as having a certain cachet in those spaces because of those official partnerships. We've done some work with CrossFit HQ. We actually we were an official streaming partner of the CrossFit Games in 2019, which we were very proud of, and which was a very very cool thing to be a part of, especially for me having done work with CrossFit previously in a previous career. And we've had syndication partnerships with everyone from Refinery 29 to Vice Media. We've done some content partnerships with outlets that are local to New York, like Men's Health is another one. So that's something I'd like to explore more of in 2020. Most of these partnerships at least the conversations start through personal relationships. You meet someone at an event, someone from a previous place you worked or where you both worked. These big organizational partnerships for us tend to start on the individual level. And so one of my resolutions in 2020 is to go out more, be more present at industry events, create more conversations, try and provide more value for other people in the fitness content industry. And hopefully that creates more partnerships, not only for BarBend, but for a lot of the other people in media that I really respect. So big organizational partnerships, especially in media, often start on a very personal level is kind of how I would sum that up.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was going to ask it, because it doesn't seem like something that's very easy to get. I mean, Reebok CrossFit Games, USA Weightlifting, Men's Health, every single one of those are huge, of course. So you need you don't just get in with a simple email, right?
It's definitely something that you gotta know someone, and you gotta kind of, they need to know you can provide value both ways.
How about to get good writers and contributors to your site? I know sites like Forbes and Fortune, some of these big sites get offered. I mean, people offer to be contributors, but starting out, that doesn't happen. Right about now, you probably get that people offer themselves. Yeah,
we get that. We get dozens and dozens. Basically dozens a week at this point, people who want to write for us, which is a cool position to be in, but at the same time, it's a lot to sort through. Mm-hmm. A lot of our contributors are top thinkers and minds in strength sports. The world record holders, or the coaches of world record holders, or champion athletes, or cutting edge researchers. Some are people we've had on our podcast, and then they become contributors a little bit after. And some are folks who we meet through our organizational partners like USA Weightlifting. A piece of advice for people who want to write for BarBend or an outlet like BarBend: when you reach out, don't just say you want to write for BarBend. Please respond. I will not respond if you do that. Like, there's almost a 0% chance I'll respond if you do that. When you reach out, if you want to contribute to an outlet, tell them what you want to contribute. Make it easy for them, right? Be like, I want to contribute. This is the type of content that I think has unique value for you that I don't necessarily see on your site. Don't just pitch me, I want to write on the back squat. What do you want to write about the back squat? We have 14 articles about the back squat every week. Like, what do you want? What do you want to say about it? What do you have to say that is going to give our site value? Ultimately, that's going to make me want to bring you on as a writer. So give me headlines. Prove to me you understand our site. Prove to me you understand that you can give something special to our site. And then we will take the time to work with you, edit you, compensate you. We pay our contributors. Meet me more than halfway, and I'm much more likely to respond.
Very good. Do you think that content is still king? Content is still number one?
I think it is. But the twist I would put on it is that single channel content, I think, is really dying out. And look, we always bemoan, oh, everything's dying, this is dying. But I think you have to diversify the types of content you're making. I think that if you truly want to be a content brand, you need to be producing written and video and maybe audio, written in a variety of capacities too. There needs to be a visual component. You need to understand that people are spending time on different platforms because they like that type of content. They might spend a lot of time listening to podcasts, or they might spend a lot of time reading, or they might spend a lot of time watching videos. If you want to reach those audiences, don't assume you're going to be able to convert them to taking in your content on a different platform than the one they're spending the most time on. You're going to have to meet them where they are, and you're going to have to produce content that's engaging and appealing to them where they are.
Yeah. David, you have a goal set up for 2020 or for the next 5 years, whatever it is? What's your next biggest goal?
I'd say the next biggest goal is one, and you made me talk about this a few minutes ago, and I really appreciate it because it's helping give some clarity to it in my own mind. So I'm really thankful. Is more organizational partnerships for BarBend, because we really enjoy working with other outlets, even other news outlets, even outlets that might technically be our competitors. We love working with people, right? Mm-hmm. We love working with other content creators, and more of those partnerships in 2020, I think is going to be really fulfilling to us. And I think it's not a space where you need to be like so competitive or so protective that you can't work with people who might be producing content in the same realm. I think that actually it's cool when you get to kind of combine forces and really give strength sports, which I think are still underserved in the content space, you get to give strength sports the coverage that we all want to give.
And how would you approach a brand or a company that you're interested in partnering with? Or better yet, how should somebody approach you if they want to do the partnership?
I think talking about the specific platform is really helpful there. So my goal in 2020, if I'm approaching someone about a partnership, is not to say, hey, I want to work together. What are your thoughts? It's, hey, I want to work together. Let's work together via a podcast, or let's work together on this video, or let's work together on this specific series of content. So if people are pitching me, what I'd like to see is people reach out and say, hey, let's partner together. I want to do something with you and your newsletter and our newsletter, or I want to get you on our podcast, get on your podcast, and then do this thing, or I want to partner on this video. So be specific on how you want to partner. It's just like if you're reaching out to be a contributing writer, be specific about what you want to write about. You know what I mean? Come with a concrete idea. And even if it's not the best idea, if you approach someone with a concrete one, they'll take you more seriously. And they'll be like, okay, that might not be the right fit, but I like that this person can actually put some shape to what they're thinking.
Yeah, awesome. And then if people would want to find you, do they contact you directly? Do they go to BarBend, or what's your pitch?
So you can reach out to BarBend on any of our social platforms. We're at BarBend on Instagram, at BarBend News on Twitter and Facebook. Me personally, I'm at D_Tao. It's D_TAO on Twitter. And I'm at David Thomas Tao on Instagram. So feel free to ping me on Twitter. info@barbend.com is a great way to reach some member of our team. Those will get kind of distributed to the right departments depending on what the requests are, regarding editorial or advertising or partnerships. So those are all very valid ways to find us.
Very good, David. I have those written down. I'm going to add them to the show notes for all of you listening. You can check them out on the show notes. And David, thank you so much. It was a huge pleasure. And I'm going to add you to my social media because I want to keep in touch.
I'll do the same. I really do appreciate the time, and to all the listeners out there, thanks so much for tuning in. This is a podcast where you're going to learn something different every time you listen, and I hope you get something out of this recording too.
Awesome. Thank you, David.